Okay, thank you very much. Is this fine? You hear me all right? Hey, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself that you may not know, because some of you know my public profile, but I want you to know what's here, and that's here. And I grew up in Redding, California. I was born in California. How many native Californians are there here? All right, they're growing and more. I was the fourth of 5 boys. My mother was 21 years of age when she had all 5 of us. And we grew up on a farm, and we grew up working. We grew up building fences, branding cows, and I never had to milk a cow, but I had to butcher rabbits, and we had chickens and hogs and horses, and that's the life I grew up with. And we knew hard work, we knew the soil, and my father owned a linen business, and he cleaned laundry for all the hotels and restaurants and hospitals, and so since I was 12 years old in the summers, I'd go and I'd work there, and we'd have to shake all the sheets, put them in a mangle. How many people know what a mangle is, right? It's a giant iron that irons an entire sheet at once, and but I'd go in there in the summers and do that. And then when I turned 16, I got my driver's license. You know, back then I got my driver's license like as early as you could. Modernly, they wait a long time. I'm not sure why that is, but since I was born on the 4th of July, I couldn't get my driver's license on my birthday because DMV was closed. But right as soon as they issued my driver's license, I got to start a route. And at every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week actually, I would get up, and 6 a.m., I would go load a giant truck up with clean linen, 6,000 pounds of linen, and every morning I would take that linen to Mercy Hospital in Redding. Happens to be the hospital I was also born. And we would, it was me alone, we would take these laundry carts, there's 20 to 25 of them at a time, and I would have to put them into the hospital staging area, and then I'd have to go to another place and pick up all the dirty linen. Oh, that was nasty, right? And but I would take all that linen back, and I would take it back to the laundry facility, and then I would head off to school. So early on, I learned about hard work. I learned about farming. I learned about faith and freedom, and my mother had us in church, all 5 of us, regularly. My dad didn't go as often as we had to, but we went. And my grandmother and grandfather, the most beautiful people that I've ever met in this world, they were in charge of the baptismal. They did volunteer work, and they would iron all the robes, all the towels, but that's the world I grew up in. It was a very simple world. We didn't have much money. How many of you grew up without much money, right? A lot of people grew up. Modernly, I don't know, but we grew up without much money. In fact, one of the things we look forward to was every year before school started in August, September, my mother would take all 5 of us, and we would go to an orchard, and we would pick pears, and we'd put them in these crates. And then we'd go to the side of the roads, and we would sell those pears, and we would make enough money to buy school clothes every year, so we would get to go in and walk in proud, act like we were worth $1 million, and in our new clothes are probably worth $2, but that's the world we grew up in. We learned the values that made this country great, and the promise of this country is the American dream, and so I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was living the American dream. And what was that? If you'd worked hard, if you sacrificed, if you had delayed gratification, and you applied yourself, that because of the freedom that we had in this country to do those types of things, we could save enough money and we could live a prosperous life and we could flourish. As far as I knew, I was flourishing then. Of course, I graduated, went to school, and flourished a little bit more and realized there was a little bit more money to be made. But the point is, these are the values. This is the cornerstone that made America great. And we've lost that, or we're losing it in this country. When I was in the legislature with Pat Bates back in the 90s, I remember we used to argue about what to do with the budget, what to do with this amount of money. And you know, the argument back then was about they had a different view of how we should spend the money, and we had a more conservative view on how you can spend the money. But we didn't disagree. We didn't disagree on what the truth was. Fast forward 20 years later, and everybody has their own truth in this country. If you want to be a woman and you're born a man, you can be a woman, I guess, if that's your truth, right? But they want to impose that as policy on everybody. And there's something very wrong in this country where you want your own truth with respect to, Inflation Reduction Act, right? Only in Washington, D.C., would they propose higher taxes and increase spending to solve a problem of higher taxes and increased spending. And that's in Washington, D.C., because that's their truth. And they believe that, and that's what they should do. And they should subsidize people who can afford electric cars. Do you think the poor people are buying electric cars? No. People who can afford, more of the affluent people are buying these electric cars, and they're subsidized by the middle class. And I think the left in this country, they're no longer the liberals that we fought in the state legislature. They've migrated to something very different. And that's what we're here to fight about. This is the soul, this is the future, this is what America, these are our crossroads. Where do we want to go? Which direction do we want to go? Do we want to go into this path of everybody has their own truth and this fraternity and socialism where everybody gets drugged down to a lowest common denominator? Or do we still want to have a country where hard work and delayed gratification and sacrifice and meritocracy works? Because that free enterprise system brought more people out of poverty than any government program could ever dare to do. And yet they want to destroy that. Because ultimately they believe if they destroy that, that's the ultimate wealth redistribution scheme. If a lot of people are rich and you make the dollar worth nothing, well, then everybody's equal again. Well, we know that socialism hasn't worked every time it's been tried. It has a 100% track record. And so we have to stop that. And I'm running for this seat right now to do one thing, is to keep the federal government from doing more harm. We have a $30 trillion deficit. We're spending $1.5 trillion more than we bring in every year. And we bring in record revenue every year. Our friend Tom McClintock used to say, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem, and that's what we do. No matter what happens in this country, the left will find, and some Republicans will find a way to have a government program to increase the budget. And we have to stop that. The point of no return, I don't know where it is. Apparently it's not 30 trillion because we haven't collapsed. But I read a report 5 years ago that it was 33 trillion. Now our economy has grown since then, so I imagine if you true it up, it's probably 38 trillion, maybe 40 trillion. But how long do you think it'll be before we're at $40 trillion in debt? We're a matter of a few short years away. And so I'm running to stop that. And how are we going to stop that? Well, Katie Porter is my opponent. She's got a lot of money. We get that. Her money comes from government employees all across the country. They've done a marvelous job of the small dollar donations and getting government employees to fund their campaigns. And our job is to take the money that we've raised very efficiently and spend it. I've raised about $2.5 million since I got in the race about 8 months ago. That's a lot of money. That's a fast pace, but it's not enough quite to match up against Porter. The good news is we have some outside money coming in. The Club for Growth has endorsed me, and they're spending money in this race. I can't tell you how they're spending it because I don't know. It's an independent expenditure. But I know typically they come in and they'll define the candidate. Katie Porter got elected in 2018 without a record. She ran for re-election in 2020 without a well-funded opponent. In 22, she has a record, and it's not a pretty record of freedom. And I will have enough money between me and the outside groups to expose her record. And that's why she'll lose in this cycle, because the coast of Orange County, I don't care if you have $50 million, you're not going to buy a socialistic agenda. I got asked by a reporter one time, is Katie Porter a socialist? I don't know, what do you guys think? I don't like to use labels like that. So I said, Katie Porter's on the spectrum. She's on the government spectrum. Because no matter what she does, she believes in more government. And I don't care whether you're a progressive, a socialist, a Marxist, or a communist. You believe government is the solution to every problem. I believe government, as Reagan said, is the problem and not the solution. There's no problem that we have in this country today that somebody doesn't exist that can solve that problem. We just got to get the government out of the way. We got to stop spending so much money and let the American people, the productivity and the entrepreneurship of the American people catch up to all the crazy spending that's been going on. And we need to set the ship straight in this country. And we can do that. We're going to take over control of Congress. We're going to fire Katie Porter and her friends in Costa Mesa. We're going to fire Nancy Pelosi. And we're going to set this country back on the right course. We have issues with the Senate, of course. Even if we get the Senate, you have cloture issues, so you can't expect a revolution to take place. You can't expect all these problems to get fixed. But the number one thing that I'm here to say is I'm going to get elected to make sure the left does no more harm to this country, and then the American people can gather together and start producing again. Because you know inflation has two components. You spend too much, you pump too much money in, and you get too much regulation, too much taxation, so people can't produce. You pay people not to go to work. What do you think is going to happen? They're not going to go to work, right? And so there's a supply problem in the country as well. And we need to get America back working again. We look like we're dipping into a recession. I saw a report yesterday, 63% of our small businesses are not hiring anymore, and a large chunk of them are laying people off in anticipation of an impending recession. Now we know the Fed's going to increase the interest rate again real soon, maybe a full point. That's going to put a screeching halt to the housing market, and you know economies often follow housing markets. So I'm not optimistic that our economy is going to be booming. We're in for some rough waters, but we need to go back to the fundamentals. We need to get government out of the business of solving every problem that comes along, and we need to let the American people address those problems so they can thrive in freedom. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hi, Johnny. Standing before you tonight, it's an odd thing because I never thought I would be back on the campaign trail. I was terming out, I had some ideas about what I was going to do. I was going to go back to being a volunteer in my community, and I'm chairman and president of our historical society. All of those things, and I got a call as I was leaving a meeting with young women who wanted me to pursue the Secretary of State job. And I said, you know, you guys, that's really tough. You know, we're starting out at a $10 million. We've got Shirley Weber, PhD, appointed. The whole Democrat machine's got her in there. Oh, Pat, we can do it for you. You know, we've got this incredible social media from San Francisco to the Mexican border. We're going to do it. Just take some time, a couple days, think about it. In the meantime, we're going to put it together. Go out to my car, and there is a call from the Lincoln Club, Teresa Hernandez, saying, we need to talk to you. There's a job we really need you to do. And I thought, ooh, okay, what's that? You know, it's not Secretary of State. Well, long story short, as you know, my story is I was recruited to run for the Board of Supervisors to ensure that we have 3 Republicans, majority on that board. You just heard what my beloved Scott Baugh, who got to be the leader, you just never remind him of that. He got to be, he was an incredible Senate assembly leader, worked so well with the other side, but he kept them in line. I think about that all the time, Scott, you know, the leadership meetings we'd have, and when we go out there, and we succeeded. It was incredible. But anyway, if we see the Orange County Board of Supervisors with 3 Democrats running the show, everything you heard from Scott, everything that we know has happened in the state of California and that government is going to happen here in Orange County, and we can't let that happen. So I agreed to get into the race, and I did that after 3 surveys were done to show that I would have the best chance of beating Katrina Foley. Is that possible? Well, I did it in terms of being the primary winner with 3 Republicans in the seat, in the race. I had no endorsements, you guys. You didn't endorse me. OCGOP didn't endorse me. They didn't endorse me 10 times and then called me a liar in one of the mailers because I was claiming that they had endorsed me. No, I put out the fact that for 10 times I received their endorsement because, yes, I have been in elective office for 31 years. And they like to make a big issue about that. They like to make a big issue about my age. Yeah, I'm old, but I am fired up. I have as much energy as anybody half my age. You will see that. I mean, I do not give up. And when they put before me the cause of not allowing a majority of Democrats on our Board of Supervisors, that really lit my fire. I had to call the young ladies who are going to help me with the Secretary of State and said, I need your help. And of course, many of them are parents, and they're starting to see what's happening to them with their children in our public schools. We won't go into that, but I do think that's our silver bullet if we get our moms and our parents really engaged about today and tomorrow and the future. I have grandchildren. Someday I'm going to have great-grandchildren. I am so worried about what's happening in this country that they will have to inherit, not just the debt, but to be run in a totalitarian government with your freedoms taken away, being watched everywhere you go, being mandated on everything that you have to do, and if you don't do it, then they're following you. Pretty soon we'll have chips in us, I guess. So I took up the cause, and it's been difficult, but I think having prevailed in the primary without any endorsements, it really speaks to the years that I have served that you just heard us run through. When I first married my husband, I was a social worker. I saw what bureaucracy was doing to people who were struggling. I will tell you that it seemed to me, right out of college, in that job, that they were trying to create a generation of people who were very poor, who were so dependent on government that they had to stay in the social services business. And I was first of all, I was just a social worker. My beat was southeast LA. The projects, I worked the projects, then I was promoted to a supervisor, and then I was promoted to deputy district director of the Los Angeles County Bureau of Social Services, and I was over the aid to the disabled and the aged program. And during those years, I saw what bureaucracy did, how it harmed people. So I became a very, very activist against the bureaucracy and having government. Government should be a facilitator, not such a strong mandated regulator on all of us. It has squashed business. My husband started our architecture business in our garage. He had the old time, it's kind of like a washboard with one of those, forget what they call it, but you draft with a thing that looks like a ruler and it has a bunch of strings on it. And that's how we built our business. So we were able to, raise our children, send them to college, build 2 homes, all the benefits of what California used to be in terms of the opportunity as an entrepreneur to thrive. And certainly, how many people do you think he employed over all the years that he was an active architect? Hundreds. And that seems to not matter anymore. That's not what this is about. It's about government can take care of us. There was a proposal, you can't believe this one, John. John would have made a great speech on this, offering $1,000 to our low-income people to give up their cars, and they would be provided transportation that's going to be funded by the government in some fashion. The aspirational ideas that these folks have that are progressives are totally unsustainable. They're totally there's no money there, clearly, to do what they're promising people, and people are buying it. So we do not need that at our county government, and I believe that if we have 3 Democrats, they will start basically adopting many of the regulations that have come that are currently at state level on our businesses, and we will see a change here that will match probably as bad as it is in Los Angeles County when we have all Democrats on that particular Board of Supervisors. Look at San Diego. I think they increased their public employees, which have incredible benefits benefits, as you all know, threefold. They hired something like 13,000 more workers down there for the variety of programs that they put in place. We do not need that here in Orange County, and I'm going to be the third vote, hopefully with Don Wagner. You all know Don, and Andrew Doe is there. Now, Andrew's had a lot of pressure, I think, in the position that he's in, so some of the things, there's been controversy over that. I'm not really that privy to how deeply that goes, but it's a matter of, we see that in Sacramento. I have Democrat friends who've said to me in the lounge, it was a great story when I was first elected and we were voting on a number of things on the floor, and of course my vote was no a lot. Van Allen, who's a wonderful young man, but very progressive environmentalist, but he came into the lounge and he said, "Pat, you guys are lucky." I said, "What do you mean, Ben?" He says, "Well, you can vote no." I said, "Well, Ben, you could too, just change your registration. I've got a registration right in my pocket over here." But in any event, I would love to have your support, your endorsement, if that's something that's available. It will help tremendously with our base. We have to get our base out to vote. And I have some statistics here I'd like to just share with you what happened in the primary in the 5th District, which, by the way, redistricted. It is all west of the freeway now, running from Newport Beach down to San Clemente. Everything on the east side, some of it used to be in the 5th District, has been removed. So that, the totals of the total vote that Katrina obviously won all of the Democrat vote, but the difference between the Republicans combined and her Democrat vote, 30,000 votes. We had 90 some, and she had something like 61,000. So we can do it, certainly based on the Republican vote, but we have to get it out. The cities that she won, Costa Mesa, that's her home city. She won Costa Mesa, Irvine, Laguna Beach, and Laguna Woods Village. If you're familiar with Laguna Woods Village, that is Leisure World. And it was very Democratic, actually. But we're talking 1,000 to 2,000 vote difference for Katrina versus the combined Republican vote. So my effort is going to be getting the vote out and letting people know I'm a Republican. There is a survey that's been done recently, and it shows if we are just neck and neck, nonpartisan, it is a dead heat between Katrina and myself. I take South County, unanimously almost. She takes the northern part of the 5th District. She takes that very, very strong, and that's where it evens out. But when the survey asked if you knew she was a Democrat and I was a Republican, it flipped, and we go up like 11, 12 percentage points. So that will be the focus of my campaign. She will have a lot of money. I don't think Scott mentioned the fact that Katie Porter is hitting the airwaves very heavily on the abortion issue. They believe that's their silver bullet. There's no question about it. She spent $4 million on cable ads. Last evening, I was watching a couple programs on CBS from 7 to 9:30. I saw her ad on abortion that the GOP, she's not talking about Scott, by the way, she's talking about the GOP, the national GOP is intending to outlaw abortions in the United States of America. That is their agenda, beware, blah, blah, blah. And it went on and on and on. You know how much those ads cost on our major medias? Huge. $4 million, that's just the start. And I sat there and I thought, you know what, Scott left, but he's got to show that what she's saying is not true here in California. It's a blatant lie. So when you call an elected official a liar, they've got problems. So hopefully Scott will have the money and we will have really good messaging points. We need it from the RNC, we need it from the CRP, we need it from the OCGOP, that we have the best messages, simple, to the point, that California happens to have rights to abortion in our state. In fact, it is up to viability, and late-term abortion, it flips the polls in, certainly those of us who are pro-life, it flips it into our direction, and I mentioned this earlier at another meeting I was at. I thought it was very interesting that the District Attorney of Los Angeles, Gascon, the famous progressive, they've tried to recall him twice, he just leveled a murder charge against the nurse that killed 5 people in a car, and the 6th person killed 8-month fetus and he's charging that one as murder. So if he can charge an 8-month fetus in the belly of a young woman who was killed, then it's murder. So remember that, and whenever I have a chance in smaller groups, I'm bringing that up. Because again, the messaging, we have to be very careful, we have to be to the point, and it has to be succinct and not get into the weeds, because they had 15 measures on that passed the legislature this last session that have everything to do with women's reproductive rights and their right to all of that. It was amazing, like all of a sudden we can't get birth control pills, all of a sudden we can't get any counseling on reproduction. This is amazing. They created a commission to deal with that, and it's taxpayer paid. $20 million to pay for abortions for people to come to California. So they do believe that's a silver bullet, and it's all of us, the super women, the supermen with our flak jackets on that have to stop that bullet and make sure that people get back to the realities. Their freedoms are going, the cost of living is going up. We're all going to be basically, based on some of the climate change things that have come through and the cost of that, we're all going to be struggling. Those of us in the present have a much better chance, but our kids, our grandkids, and on up, it's not a good picture, but we can change it. And that's why Pat Bates agreed to run in this race. My knowledge of county issues, I am studying every night like I'm back studying for the bar because I have been away from it for 8 to 9 years in terms of what the county issues are, how it's affecting our communities. And if you have time and would like to share with me here in Costa Mesa what are the really top issues and things that I need to pay very good attention to and that I need to have the understanding. So when I am in forums with Katrina, I can provide or present solutions, because that's what I did with John. John sat next to me for 8 years on the Board of Supervisors. We did wonderful things. They changed a lot of it. We had an incredible how long did it take us, John? About 2.5 years to rein in the pension situation with our deputy sheriffs, our law enforcement that we love, but it's an unsustainable curve. And they undid it as soon as we were all gone. I think it was the next round after John was elected to the Senate, I'm elected to the Senate, and I looked, and after 3 years, and we worked out this great plan, bingo, gone with the people that were on there. So we won't let that happen, but I want you to keep the faith, and I really want, hopefully, that you will give me opportunities to meet people in your community, because they don't know me. They may have heard of me, but they don't know how passionate I am that it's your government. It's your government. I represent you, but I don't go up there with Pat Bates' agenda. I go up there with yours. I go to the halls of government, be it the city council, the board of supervisors, the state legislature, and I try to reflect that it's your government and what makes you have a quality of life and sustainable and something as good as I had growing up. The fact that my husband could build a huge architecture business out of our garage is something that's not available these days for our kids. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to be here. You know I'm passionate, I have energy, and just because I'm elder, I'm a senior, I don't give up, and I challenge anybody half my age to think that they could keep up with me. I'm not kidding you. And by the way, one last thing, I had to go to the doctor because I twisted my ankle, and I said, something's wrong. He said, well, we better x-ray it. He came back, he says, well, Pat, you know, you don't have any arthritis in that ankle. And I said, I'm going to bring that up because given my age, I ought to. He says, no, it looks like you could even be a teenager. And I said, sounds good to me, Doc. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
So apologies to everyone that I'm cutting in line in front of. We have a hearing that was not scheduled for Friday and is going to be working all night, and I appreciate it. And I know John Thomas and John Morlock will do a really good job of covering some of the Costa Mesa issues. I'm in District 5. I'm on the west side. I've worked for Latham & Watkins, a local law firm, for almost 30 years. I'm a land use specialist. I also do environmental law, project siting, energy things, all that good stuff. We represented the Seiden desalination plant. We represented Irvine Company in Segerstrom and all kinds of developments. It's really a great career that's given me a lot of experience with knowing how government works and how government impacts everyday decisions for all over, for literally everything, business, people. And I really appreciate Senator Bates' comments about local government, because that's the reason I'm in this race. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and a very busy career, and I've sat there and watched what's happened in the city since the Democrats took over. If anybody's familiar with city stuff, they fired all the commissioners that were appointed and had terms to serve, and came in and swept in with an entirely new agenda, and have changed things dramatically in the city, and have taken government away from the people and taken it and consolidated it in the council. They hired a bunch of council aides. I think a city council member in Costa Mesa is supposed to be part-time. It's not your job. You're not a politician. It's not your career. You're supposed to read the staff reports. You're supposed to talk to the constituents. You're supposed to analyze everything and give it a citizen's perspective on stuff. They hired a bunch of council aides to meet with constituents. They hired a bunch of people to do the job of what they're supposed to do so they can be politicians. And we've seen over the last few years that they've done the Katrina Foley model, where they've decided to make government bigger, to do more things. And city government is supposed to do just a few things. It's supposed to keep you safe, put out fires, keep the streets clean, paved, have the infrastructure, provide parks, provide arts, and then, maybe some after-school stuff for the kids and things like that. It is not supposed to be everything for everybody. And we're seeing that happen here in Costa Mesa. We're seeing the city spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on social programs and homeless shelters and affordable housing and all this stuff that private developers should be building affordable housing. They should be funding it with government funds from other sources that are dedicated to that. We have issues in Costa Mesa that we need to address, and I think that myself and John Thomas and John Morlock can do a much better job than this current council, because we're going to focus on the people. We're not going to focus on implementing Sacramento policies, and we have council members right now who are doing that. And there are some very serious threats to our community. A lot of people believe there's a recession coming. We need to make sure we focus on our financial security. We need to be able to pay our cops and firefighters. We need to make sure their pensions are secure. We need to make sure that we have addressed the homelessness population in a compassionate, realistic way. If you've seen what's happened in California with this housing first model that came into being a while ago, it's horrible, it's abusive. It leaves people alone and afraid and addicted and mentally ill, fending for themselves. Giving them a key is not going to help them get out of homelessness. You need to address the underlying problems. And I think Costa Mesa has really strong homeless support matters. We have wonderful support agencies. We have Trellis, we have all kinds of really good agencies that are helping, non-government organizations that are helping the city, but we need to make sure that our focus is on treatment and shelter and not just housing people with all of these issues untreated and undealt with. So we also have some criminal issues. The crime rates appear to be going down if you look at strict numbers. That's because a lot of things aren't getting reported. When you have the new state laws that came into effect decriminalizing a lot of stuff, making the threshold for property crime $950, a lot of crimes aren't getting reported, and you have the perception in the neighborhoods from all the people I've talked to, and my own self, I lived in Costa Mesa for almost 30 years. We had a bike stolen off our porch. Never happened before. Just walked up onto our porch and stole a bike because people have impunity. We knew who the guy was, gave the video to the police, nothing happened. So you have that, you have the perception of crime, you have people getting their doors open all night long, you have issues that need to be addressed. And I think we can focus on, better patrols, better preventative measures for police work, empowering the police, not taking away resources from the police, and really focusing on public safety. We also have some dramatic land use issues coming up. The state has decided that it wants to be the local land use planner. It's been passing bills willy-nilly that take away local control. They have SB 9, which came in, which is saying you can take a residential R1 single-family lot, split it in half, and put 4 houses on it. That was passed into law in Costa Mesa. You have SB 10, which is coming down the pike, which is the transit-oriented development thing, where the city will decide what is considered a transit area for development purposes, and then the zoning in an immediate area around that is essentially wiped away. We need to protect our neighborhoods. This council, a lot of the people who are running for council right now have that in their campaign materials. They've got Measure K, which they're calling Protect Residential Neighborhoods. It's nonsense. They want to put apartment buildings and commercial places right next to single family and other residential areas. And one of the things that I think that, and I know I don't have a lot of time here, one of the things that I think we need to focus on is how this council is accountable to the people or not accountable to the people. And so with this Measure K that came up, that's one of the things they did. It's just an example of the way they govern. They rushed it through, they announced it, they sprung it on the people 1 week. A week later, they decided they were going to pass it. And then when people objected to that, they came back 2 weeks later. But they made substantial changes. And one of those substantial changes they made was removing the affordable housing trigger. What they sold this was as a way to deal with housing. And they had a whole bunch of people come down to the city council meeting. It was terrible to see how they took advantage of them. People who didn't speak English, people who said they couldn't afford a home, they were there for affordable housing. But then this council took that affordable housing element out during the meeting. If anybody knows how government works, during the meeting, they gave people 15 minutes to read it, 15 minutes to comment on it, and then they went ahead and voted on it. They misrepresented the housing element process. It's just a shady, non-accountable, dishonest way of running things. And I think that we need to bring back accountability. We need to bring back balance. You know, there are Democrats, a lot of them in Costa Mesa, and there are Republicans in Costa Mesa too. We need to have some balance. Right now, it's 6-1 Democrat. And that's not helping the city. So I think that Republicans really need to come together. You know, I've been involved in Republican politics in Costa Mesa for a long time, and Republicans are very principled, and we get caught up on things that we don't like about somebody. And so we don't come together and unite to get Republican values and Republican things move forward. If you look at the way the Democrats work in Costa Mesa, they may be fighting like cats and dogs behind the scenes, but they're completely unified at election time. It's time for us to unify. It's time for us to come together. It's time for us to take our city back and bring some balance back to Costa Mesa, some accountability back to Costa Mesa, and some responsibility. So I hope that you vote for the Republican candidates. I'm on the West Side, District 5, and I really would appreciate your endorsement. And I appreciate you letting me cut in line, John and John Thomas and John and everybody, John and Jim. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity this evening. Yeah, my name is Jim Atkinson, and I'm the director for Mesa Water District 4, Division 4. Yeah, I've been on the board for 24 years, and my fellow board members and I, we have been able to carry out a vision that was started back in the mid-60s to transition Mesa Water from imported water, 100% imported water, to groundwater. In the long term, that has and will save the constituents of Costa Mesa millions of dollars. And based on some of those activities, our board has set some other priorities and goals. We talked about the expansion of the Mesa Water Reliability Facility. And in 2017, when we brought that online, it meant that that transition from imported water to groundwater was complete. We're now 100% local, reliable groundwater agency. So our board established economically efficient policies and practices, financial policies that have allowed us to achieve a goal that we set out for a AAA bond rating. That bond rating recently saved us a significant amount of money. We got an extremely low rate on our bonds to do some infrastructure refinancing, spreading the cost of that over many years so that it doesn't have a big negative impact on our ratepayers. Among other goals that the board set were allowing staff to maintain the district's infrastructure systems appropriately, and that too sets another goal in place to minimize our water loss. By minimizing water loss, and staff has achieved that, we save the ratepayers, again, a significant amount of money. That money saved, as the water loss leader nationally, we're down in the 2% water loss, and there's almost no other agencies in California in that range, which is pretty amazing. Our Mesa Water performs over 30,000 water quality tests every year. And in the over 60 years since the establishment of Mesa Water, we've never had a water quality incident. That's significant because water quality incidents occur up and down the state, up and down the county, all the time. And we've never had a problem in that area. Again, part of the policies and goals that our board has established and maintained over the years. So again, I'm Jim Atkinson. I'm running for Mesa Water Division 4, and I would appreciate your endorsement and support. Thank you very much. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to the Costa Mesa Republican Assembly. Citizens advocates groups like yours make all the difference in local elections like ours. We couldn't win without you. It's boots on the ground and the bench that we build here at these local election seats that lead to people like Senator Bates that serves in the State Assembly, Mr. Baugh, and Mr. Morlock, who ascend to these other political positions, but this is how we build the bench. So it's very important. I have a long history of service in the community here as on Mesa Water District's board, also 8 years at the Orange County Water District, and for the past 6 years as in the leadership of the pension fund Orange County Employee Retirement System. So I like to say that pure, plentiful, and affordable water are fundamental to our quality of life and key to the economic development of our community. Our district, we have no pension liability, we're AAA credit rated, and we're currently rebuilding the system for the generations yet to come. As Mr. Atkinson said, we did this at the lowest cost of debt service in generations. We are literally hit the bottom of the yield curve during the pandemic to finance the infrastructure for the next 100 years. Last year, we delivered 5 billion gallons of pure, plentiful, and affordable water to your house, 24/7, 365, and throughout the drought, and throughout all the conservation rules, laws, rules, and regulations that were passed down from us from Sacramento. We held your rate steady. So let me just say that we made promises, and I believe I've kept them. So promises made, promises kept. And so let's not leave our critical public infrastructure to chance. Vote for the incumbents, vote for the people you know, vote for the people who built the system that delivers the water today. We really appreciate your support and hope that you endorse us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here. Yes, I've been on the Water District for about 13 years. You heard some of the highlights of what we've done there. I'm proud to have been part of it. I'm actually in the middle of my 4-year term. I'm not up for re-election for Mesa Water, but I'm running for another water district seat called the Orange County Water District. The Orange County Water District is responsible for delivering water to over 2.5 million Orange County residents and all the businesses. And as Mr. Dewane said, it is the key to quality of life and economic growth and protecting property values. So this Orange County Water District is responsible for the economic engine here in Orange County. I want to get on that board and implement process improvements like we've done at Mesa Water to bring the best service value. Orange County Water District manages the 3 of the largest water supplies in all of Southern California. And that's the Santa Ana River. It is the Central Basin here, the aquifer, that 19 pumpers use to deliver water to these 2.5 million plus people, Mesa Water included. We pump from there. And then their world-renowned groundwater replenishment system, which recycles 100 million gallons a day of all our indoor water use back into the basin through a reverse osmosis process. Then it's injected. It's world-renowned. So That's how important Orange County Water District is. And the reason I'm running against the incumbent is because from the first time I took the oath of office, I always knew I needed to be accountable, transparent, and visible. This person who was elected 4 years ago has been invisible. No one really seems to know him. He hasn't come to our district like past representatives have every year to give updates. At Mesa Water, I've held town hall meetings every year. So I'm the kind of person that you will get to talk to. I'll hear your concerns, your priorities. It helps me evolve as a board director. Also, I think, though, you also need to represent the voters. And I think what the voters want from a water district is abundance of water. It's again, the key to our quality of life. And we want to have this water abundance now and for our children in the future. And here's where there's a contrast between me and the incumbent. We're in the middle of a mega drought. The Coastal Commission has been hearing from the Seiden desal project in Huntington Beach for 20 years. I have testified, well, not testified, I'll say, I spoke in favor of all the permits at all the Coastal Commission hearings, helped usher this along. Let me correct that, not all the hearings, but all the hearings since I got on Mesa Water in 2009. They had some the previous 10 years also, but I was there 2 months ago when the Coastal Commission killed the project on a 12-0 vote. I tried to speak passionately why we needed it. I said I'm for all the other stuff you said we could do, such as recycling, storage, groundwater cleanup, but all those require rain. Only desal is drought-proof. There's an endless supply of water. You don't need rain, everything else needs rain. Well, my opponent was also there speaking, but he spoke against the desal plant. He helped kill the desal plant. And when you look across every political spectrum, just residents as a whole, desalination is popular with 72% of the people. They want the water. So if you're supposed to represent your constituents, as Pat Bass said, you should not be trying to kill what 72% of the people want. So that's my main thrust, because after it was killed, he was spiking the football with articles saying anyone who wanted it was corrupt. So I decided someone has to step up. I'm stepping up. It is difficult to unseat an incumbent, but I have a known name in Costa Mesa. I've been a Parks Commissioner, Planning Commissioner, on the boards of the Senior Center, Chamber of Commerce, chaired the Finance Committee, a lot of stuff like that. And Costa Mesa is part of my district, plus about half of Newport Beach, sections of Irvine, and sections of Fountain Valley. 145,000 voters, about 78,000 households, so it's a lot of area to cover. But I have the knowledge, the experience, and the commitment, and I bring the results. So I'm hoping to get your endorsement tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
What about the desalination project down in Diwane? Has that been canceled, or what's?
No, that's being built, and that's being done through South Coast Water District, and they have a small capacity, nothing like there was going to be 50 million gallons a day from this desal plant. That plant, I don't really know exactly. Shawn, do you know? But it's about a tenth. It's very small. They can expand it if they can get other partners for it, but it is going. They don't have the resistance that the groups came together in Huntington Beach against this, unfortunately. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Michael Seiden, running for Costa Mesa Sanitary District, Division 1. Unlike pretty much everyone else in this room, I'm actually new to Costa Mesa, but that's part of my story. I recently moved down here with my wife, Sam, and our 1-year-old son, Will, from Los Angeles. And we did that because I no longer felt comfortable raising a child in a city that's been subjected to one-party rule for decades and everything that's generated there. Whether it's the crime, the blight, or the homelessness, it's just not something my wife and I are willing to tolerate. So we moved down to Orange County, hoping to find like-minded people like yourselves who shared our values and who foster a community where you can raise a child in a safe environment. Unfortunately, soon after moving down here, in talking to some of you who are here tonight, I started to learn that unfortunately Costa Mesa seems to be on a similar track as Los Angeles in terms of falling victim to one-party rule. I've said enough is enough. I'm not going to stand by and have hushed conversations with my friends in rooms. I'm not going to sit there and get mad. I'd like to do something about it. And we live in a place now where I think you can organize with groups like these and stand up and do something about it. So it may sound a little silly that I'm that passionate about it and yet running for the Sanitary District. I didn't know what the Sanitary District was, but that actually feeds into what I'm talking about. I was shocked to learn that it is a board that employs about 13 people, has 5 board members, 2 pieces of real estate, and it manages 1 trash contract. And it doesn't even do a good job on it. I think every other week I get the call that my trash is being delayed or not picked up, and that seems unacceptable given all the effort put into managing this sanitary district. So I was encouraged to run. I think it's a great starting point, both in terms of sanitary district issues. I'll touch on a couple of them quickly and then move on so that you can all get home to dinner. But more importantly, for me, it's a chance to meet all of you and see how I can help in our new home and make sure that our community is in good hands now and also in the future. Very quickly, I'll touch on if I am elected, and I'd love your endorsement to help me get there, looking to improve the service of that 1 trash contract, holding CR&R to task, making sure that contract, when it is up, is competitively bid, as it has not been in decades. And more importantly, exploring the idea that I understand has a lot of support in our community for frankly merging the sanitary district into Mesa Water. I understand there's a lot of support for the idea. I understand that would result in millions of dollars of immediate and future savings to the city, especially at a time where I think we are very much heading for a recession. And yet I'm appalled to hear that despite having a lot of public support, the idea has gone nowhere with the current board. So I promise you to look into that and pursue it vigorously if I am elected. And again, just thanks for having me and welcoming me into this community as so many of you have already.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So, every election it comes up. We've had one for what, 40-something years, I believe?
Sounds about right.
Are you going to be putting that up to bid? So we get some better pricing?
I understand that it's a long-term contract. Frankly, I don't know when the current expiration of the term is, but absolutely it's something we'd be looking at to see if we can competitively bid it when and if the time, not if, but when the time comes.
Hi guys. I am just a regular mom and I am running for school board and I am tired of going to school board meetings and not being listened to. I'm tired of not being able to go onto my kid's campus. Not allowed to walk my kid to class anymore. Parents are kept off and out of the way. Can't go into the library, can't go into the classrooms unless you're invited for, now, just recently, for teacher conferences. Those were over Zoom for many 2 years. So I want to change these things. We have some issues in our district with curriculum, like a lot of other districts and places in the country. A lot of questionable material in books, one-sided curriculum, one-sided supplemental materials. I love teachers. One of my best friends is a teacher, and I love teachers, and my kids are very fortunate to have some very fabulous teachers. But some of the materials that are out there for the schools to use are very one-sided and not giving a whole picture, and I want to change that. I want to represent the parents in the community and be a voice for them and for the students as well. My opponent is supported by Planned Parenthood and the Teachers Union and Katrina Foley. They have the machine behind her, and I am just me. I've never run for anything before. I'm not a great public speaker, as you can tell. I just want to make a difference for my kids who are enrolled in our schools. I have a 11th grader and a 6th grader. So I have, a number of years left, and I want them to be positive. I want them to be good. I want to represent Newport-Mesa School District, and with your help and your endorsement, I look forward to making some positive change for our kids and keeping the bad stuff out. We just need to get back to basics and just teach our kids reading, math, science, and no agenda. No agenda. Let's just get back to basics. So that's going to be my goal. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'll be around afterwards just so everyone can get in. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. John Mourani. Very happy to be here. A lot of distinguished people in this room. Happy to be part of such an involved community and wanting to improve their community and their cities. And thank you very much for letting me speak today. So I am running for Sanitary District, Division 3, and I, like Michael, didn't expect to be in this position and running for this role. I kind of just started with, seeing Christmas trees in the street for 3-4 weeks at a time, driving down the streets and seeing mattresses and dishwashers and things out there for long periods of time, and I just asked the question, why is this? And in a great city like Costa Mesa, how can we have something like this happen, right? So it just led me to get involved. I've been involved in a lot of different community activities, very involved in my parish church, St. John the Baptist on Baker Street. Parent Auxiliary President, Knights of Columbus, as you heard. So I've always done things to give back to the community and help other people in need. And again, it was just something like, I think the Republican Conservative Party is really the party of just common sense, really. It doesn't take much. You think, why is it so hard to get government to work? It should just be common sense solutions, but when you get outside influences and involvement, it just changes everything. And from something like the Sanitary District, it should be just common sense. And I don't really know too much about my opponent. I know that he's been on the board for 25, 30 years. And like Michael said, how do we not have an open bid contract on our waste hauling team for 50 years, going back to World War II, I understand. So, and not only that, they're locked into a contract, and we're giving them a voluntary raise that they didn't even ask for. That doesn't seem like common sense to me. So, I just want to make a difference. I have 3 daughters. They're all in college, and I'm worried about their future. Sanitary District may think, well, what does that have to do with our children? The condition of our city and the appearance of our city has a lot to do with attracting homelessness as well. One feeds the other. And when we can't have our waste picked up and people are complaining and things out in the street, I think that helps or increases the homelessness problem in our city. So again, I'm not a politician. I just think common sense solutions. Like Michael said, I think we're both see eye to eye on a lot of the things about just making small changes can make big difference to our local communities and help make our city great and have our kids be proud to live in a good community. So thank you very much for your time, and glad to be here. And my website is johnmourani.com. So if you want more information, you can find it there. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm not good at public speaking, so let's start with that. I'm a little nervous. I've had 2 older children that went through the Newport-Mesa Unified School District. They went to Victoria Elementary School, T. Winkle, and Estancia. During that time, I was a single mom for 8 years. I worked as an international background researcher and skip tracer. I've since retired from that, but I still do taxes, notary, and I've been very active in our community, going to like the Mexican consulate and giving free tax seminars to anyone, legal or not, how to file taxes and what the laws are. Some people in 2018 turned things around and said that I was against my own Hispanic community, wanting them to pay taxes, okay? That wasn't good. Yeah, it was an educational thing which they twisted. Anyways, I've been active at the senior center, giving free notary services. I don't believe at being a senior, and why should you pay to get anything notarized? And some notaries overcharge, even if like for travel fees. So I even travel now to the tower, once a week, and I notarize documents for them so they don't have to get out of the living quarters. Currently, I have a 14-year-old that is in Costa Mesa High School in 9th grade. There were some issues that happened last year, believe it or not, and we brought him up with counselors, psychologists, and they prefer, meaning employees, they're not allowed to talk about this with anyone else, but we do have a lot of children that try to commit suicide, and that's my #1 priority right now. Mental wellness for the kids, and no one talks about this, but verbal and mental abuse for the parents too. Especially last year when my kid was in 8th grade, I got different phone calls from parents. Kids punched one kid, and one got caught doing vaping or ditching and whatnot. And it's like, I asked counselors, well, is there any help for parents? They said no. I said, why not? I mean, we're really concerned with the kids, but we need to get help for everyone. I get phone calls like if I was a social worker, and because I help in different organizations, I get phone calls anywhere from domestic violence or phone calls that someone said, call Nico's mom, we don't have groceries. And some lady said, does the chamber pay for this or the city? I said, no, I'm just a volunteer with different organizations. I went to the grocery store and bought groceries. These are the phone calls that I get day to day. And someone said, your day is never the same. I said, no. One day I might be at a courthouse translating for someone. Some day someone's staying over at my house with their kids, overnight while I get them somewhere to stay. So running for school board, it's just another way of helping, but I have been far too long doing this through United Way, Lions Club, just different organizations. So I'd appreciate your help, your vote, or endorsement. If you have any questions, I'll be hanging around here. Okay? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. John Thomas Patton. I'm a candidate for Costa Mesa City Council District 3. And I want to share a brief story with you. Go back to 2019, June of 2019. I've got a 1.5-year-old, and I take him to the park down the street from our house. And what am I greeted by when I take him to the park? I'm greeted by caution tape. It's the middle of June. It's 90 degrees outside. There's not a single soul within a quarter mile of the two of us. And I'm greeted by caution tape and told by the city of Costa Mesa if I'm not wearing a mask that I'm subject to a fine in public. At that point, I started to question, what are we doing? What are we doing as a city? What are we doing as a county, as a country? And so I began to ask questions. I began to speak up, and I kept getting the same feedback from people. It was, you should really think about running for office. And so one of those people actually introduced me to Councilman Don Harper in District 1, and we had a conversation, and he said, John Thomas, I think you should run for office. And so I began to ask questions. I began to sit down with people. I sat down with Senator Mourani. I sat down with others. The funny thing is Senator Mourani told me not to run. He said, focus on your family, take care of your family. You have, at the time, one young son at home, and now I have a 3-year-old at home and a 3.5-month-old at home. And I do. I feel like I find a balance there, and I'm able to spend time with them because really, after my faith, my most important responsibility is as a husband and as a father, and then to this community. And so I take those responsibilities seriously. And I decided to run for office. Now, Michael Seiden had talked about it earlier, and it's absolutely, I think, the single biggest problem facing Costa Mesa today. And we share that problem with Sacramento. We are dominated by one-party rule in Costa Mesa. There is no voice of dissent. There is no voice of disagreement. And this country was founded on principles of disagreement. They were founded on principles of faith. But what we came through in the founding of this country was men that came together for one common goal, and they found that purpose together. And through that disagreement, through kindness and the willingness to listen and the willingness to work with others, we founded the greatest nation on this earth. And so what we find ourselves with here in Costa Mesa is we find ourselves with, despite our unelected mayor's new campaign video, we find ourselves at a budget deficit every year. The city of Costa Mesa needed $26 million in federal funds this last year in order to balance the budget, but we have a balanced budget. What happens when we don't get that $26 million this year? We're currently facing $240 million in debt, but yet the current unappointed mayor is talking about a $53 million budget reserve. Well, it's not really a reserve if we owe it to someone else. I look at my own district, and I look at the devastating effects that Measure K will have. Measure K, in case you don't know, is the council's workaround for Measure Y. Now, there are a lot of people in this room, there are a lot of people all over Costa Mesa that didn't think Measure Y was a great idea. It stifled growth in Costa Mesa, but it was the response to the former council and really the will of the voters. It passed by almost a 70% vote. And so the current council, as was said earlier by candidate Dickson, came out and sold Measure K as a measure that would provide affordable housing, that had height restrictions, that would be responsible with growth. And I think no one better than Councilman Harper has summed it up correctly. They got it wrong. And we see this in government at every level. See, typically it's supposed to be ready, aim, fire. That's how legislation should work. We should prepare, we should do our due diligence, then we should pass that law when we're ready to execute it. And yet with Measure K, we're going fire, aim, ready. So go ahead and pass this in November and then leave it up to the council to decide what that unregulated growth is going to look like. Now, no one's district is impacted more than District 3. It's going to cover almost all of Harbor Boulevard, almost all of Newport Boulevard. You'll see unregulated growth along Bristol from the border of Santa Ana all the way to the border of Newport. And you're going to see some unregulated growth on Baker. For those of you in here who love the Hispanic community, once they have unregulated growth along Placentia, West 19th, West 17th, you will no longer have a Hispanic community in Costa Mesa. They will be gentrified out of and priced out of Costa Mesa. We can't afford another 4 years. We can't afford another 4 months of a council that's being run the way it's run now. My opponent in District 3 is actually the proponent for Measure K. That measure will devastate the homeowners in her own district, and yet she led the ad hoc committee to bring out Measure K. So, as a father, as a husband, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the direction of this city. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not a politician. I've never run for elected office. But I'm passionate about where we live. We live in an amazing city, but it's taking a wrong turn. And I want this place to be a city where my 3-year-old son and where my 3.5-month-old daughter and where Michael's 1-year-old son can grow and they can thrive and they can prosper and they can do all the things that we want to do here in Costa Mesa. We have every opportunity to do that here, but it's time for a change. It's time for new leadership in Costa Mesa. And it's time for the people of Costa Mesa to be represented by people who represent them and not special interests. So I hope that you will consider me for District 3 City Council in Costa Mesa. John Thomas Patton.